Britain has been through many budget controversies, but few have escalated as quickly and as dramatically as the one surrounding Chancellor Rachel Reeves in the final week of November 2025. In just a matter of days, a story that began as pre-budget briefing speculation exploded into allegations of misleading the public, accusations of market manipulation, and demands for investigations by both the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prime Minister's ethics advisor. In this video, we're going to walk through what happened, why it matters, and why the fallout has become one of the biggest political crises of the year. The story begins in early November, when the Treasury briefed journalists and politicians that Rachel Reeves was facing a major £20 to £30 billion black hole in the public finances. They said this gap came from downgraded productivity forecasts by the OBR. Reeves repeated this message publicly on November 4th, warning in a Downing Street speech that weak productivity had consequences for the public finances, signalling that tax rises were likely. Her message seemed clear. The nation's finances were worse than expected, and higher taxes were needed to fix them. These claims shaped market expectations and fueled speculation about income tax rises, with analysts, businesses, households, and the media responding to what looked like a serious fiscal emergency. Everything shifted on Friday, November 28th, when the OBR provided a detailed account of its discussions with the Treasury in the run-up to the budget. The OBR revealed that it had informed Reeves on the 17th of September, more than 2 months earlier, that the fiscal gap was actually smaller than initially feared. The most significant moment came on October 31st, when the OBR told Reeves that after updated tax receipt data, she did not face a deficit at all. Instead, the OBR informed her that she had a £4.2 billion surplus before policy decisions. This contradicted the narrative that Reeves continued promoting to the public, that the country faced a black hole, that this created urgent pressure to raise taxes, and that the UK's finances were deteriorating rapidly. It also contradicted the Treasury's briefings to journalists and MPs, which had repeatedly insisted that the situation was dire. As soon as the OBR document was released, political and public attention swung sharply towards the Chancellor. The new information directly challenged the justification behind her £26 billion budget tax rises and the decision to prepare the public for an increase in income tax. The revelation also indicated that Reeves and her team had withheld critical information, not only from the public, but also from the Cabinet, parliamentary colleagues, and markets. According to reporting from The Telegraph, Sir Keir Starmer was aware there was no black hole in public finances, and yet approved Rachel Reeves's lies that exaggerated the fiscal shortfall. Downing Street has confirmed the Prime Minister was happy with a speech by Miss Reeves that critics said misled the public about the need for tax rises in the budget. This is despite Sir Keir being made aware of official forecasts showing her fiscal rules would be met, and that the Office for Budget Responsibility's downgrade to productivity had not led to a shortfall in the public finances. In an extraordinary attempt to shore up the Chancellor's position, Number 10 claimed on Saturday night that Miss Reeves's comments were entirely accurate. Multiple Labour sources stated that Starmer and Reeves are inextricably tied, meaning that removing her would have political consequences for him as well. Some Labour figures expressed concern that the budget messaging had exposed serious weaknesses in both their leadership styles. The most striking part of this crisis is that the alarm is no longer coming only from Conservative critics or political opponents. It's coming from inside Labour itself. That is what has shaken Westminster. It is one thing for rival parties to accuse a Chancellor of misleading the public. That is expected in the heat of politics. But when Labour MPs, advisers and senior figures begin to question the integrity of their own leadership, the situation shifts from a partisan dispute to a genuine internal reckoning. These revelations have left even long-standing Labour supporters stunned, raising the uncomfortable possibility that both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor may have known far more than they admitted publicly. According to reporting from The Telegraph, a senior Labour source said, "This looks pretty bad. Keir made a point of being more involved in the budget from the beginning, and now it appears the story from the Chancellor is not what the OBR is saying. There are clearly questions for Keir and Rachel to answer." An MP added it's hard to see how they come back from this. The Chancellor is now facing an inquiry by the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, after the Tories accused her of market abuse, which is a civil offence. Sir Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, said the Chancellor's comments were misleading and caused volatility on the markets. Following the OBR revelations, pressure continued to build. Conservative Shadow Chancellor Sir Mel Stride wrote to the FCA requesting a full investigation into potential market abuse by anyone with access to confidential budget information. In a letter to Nicola Rathie, the FCA chief executive, Sir Mel said Miss Reeves's comments and the subsequent briefings meant that market speculation has been rife and the gilt markets volatile. All of this coincided with a period of interest rate decision-making, he said. In addition, investors, businesses and ordinary families will have taken decisions based on briefings from Treasury and public statements by ministers which we now know have been misleading. This has included the repeated disclosure of market-sensitive details of budget decisions and the official forecasts. I am therefore requesting a full investigation by the FCA into possible market abuse by all those who would have had access to confidential information, including at Treasury and 10 Downing Street. The FCA confirmed receipt of the letters but declined to comment on ongoing correspondence. Nonetheless, the call for an FCA investigation significantly elevated the seriousness of the situation. Accusations of market abuse are highly unusual in UK politics and indicate the level of concern among MPs and financial stakeholders. Opposition parties quickly raised questions about the accuracy of these claims. The Scottish National Party accused the Treasury of giving deliberately false and misleading information. The Scottish National Party, SNP, has urged the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, to examine claims of deliberately false and misleading briefings concerning a purported £20 billion black hole in the public finances. According to SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn, the Chancellor's narrative about a £20 billion black hole was not merely exaggerated, but fake. And he directly linked Reeves's November 4th speech to movements in financial markets, foreign exchange, and even Bank of England decision-making. Flynn went further and wrote to the Financial Conduct Authority demanding an investigation into whether Reeves's statements could amount to market manipulation. In his letter to the FCA, SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn accused the Treasury of briefing about a fake £20 billion black hole and questioned whether Miss Reeves's November 4th speech amounted to market manipulation. He stated that intervention from the Chancellor, alongside the briefings on the need to fill the non-existent £20 billion Treasury black hole, had a significant impact on the financial markets, on business investment decisions, on foreign exchange rates, and will likely have fed into the Bank of England decision-making around interest rates, which took place 2 days after her speech. At this stage, Downing Street denied any wrongdoing, insisting that Reeves was simply talking about the challenges the country was facing. But the controversy was only beginning. Separate to the FCA issue, Nigel Farage submitted a detailed letter to Sir Laurie Magnus, the Prime Minister's independent ethics advisor. Farage asked him to open an inquiry into whether Reeves breached the ministerial code by failing to provide accurate and truthful information to Parliament and the public. In his letter, Farage described a sustained and deliberate narrative used to prepare political ground for tax increases. He argued that the OBR's published exchanges proved that Reeves's tax rises were policy choices, not unavoidable responses to a fiscal emergency. The ethics advisor acknowledged the letter, and while he has the authority to open an inquiry without the Prime Minister's permission, he must notify Starmer before proceeding. Reeves publicly responded by saying she did not believe any investigation was necessary, insisting she had been clear with the public. She also told Channel 4 News that she does not believe an investigation is necessary into whether she misled the public.
If you're so sure you are right about this and that you did not mislead taxpayers and the markets, would you welcome an independent investigation that looked into this and could draw a line under it?
Well, the Office of Budget Responsibility have published their numbers. I've now delivered the budget. That budget is consistent with the speech that I made at the beginning of November to cut the cost of living, to cut NHS waiting lists and to cut the debt and the deficit. I said in that speech that everyone would need to contribute, but I kept that contribution as low as possible.
That was a very clear question, though. Just for the record, would you welcome an investigation that could draw a line under this, whether you misled the markets and taxpayers or not?
I don't think that is necessary. No. The Office of Budget Responsibility have published their numbers.
As pressure intensified, stories emerged from within the government itself. According to multiple cabinet ministers, Reeves and Starmer had misled senior members of their own team in the weeks leading up to the budget. Ministers have accused Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves of misleading the cabinet by claiming there was a hole in the public finances to justify tax rises. The Chancellor repeatedly highlighted a downgrade in productivity forecasts in a series of cabinet meetings as she made the case for raising taxes in the budget. One meeting on November 4th was held after Reeves had signalled in a Downing Street press conference that she was preparing to break Labour's manifesto pledge by raising the basic rate of income tax. She told the cabinet that Britain faced challenges in the form of tariffs, unstable borrowing costs, inflation, and long-term productivity. She said she had to respond to the world as it is now, not as she might wish it to be. Ministers emerged convinced that the public finances were in such a dire state that a manifesto-breaking tax increase was necessary. In fact, the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, had already informed the Chancellor privately that the downgrade had been more than offset by higher than expected tax revenues. Based on Reeves's description, ministers left the meeting convinced that income tax rises were unavoidable. One cabinet member said that had they been told about the OBR's surplus announcement, they might have advised against raising public expectations of imminent tax hikes, which caused significant concern among voters. Another minister said the handling of the budget has been a disaster from start to finish. A third minister described the situation as weak and incompetent. These were not minor criticisms. They reflected a breakdown in trust within the government's own leadership at a time when the budget was already under fire from the media, markets, and opposition MPs. On Sunday, Rachel Reeves appeared on multiple political shows, including Laura Kunsberg and Channel 4 News. During these interviews, she consistently insisted that she had not lied, even when pressed multiple times. She attempted to reframe the debate by arguing that OBR's numbers did not include her decision to build £22 billion of headroom into the budget or the cost of earlier policy reversals on welfare payments and winter fuel allowances. However, the core accusation remained. The OBR had already informed her that there was no deficit, yet she continued to publicly imply there was a large hole that required tax rises to fill. When asked directly why her statements were not misleading, Reeves did not offer an explanation that satisfied her critics. Koonsberg also asked Reeves to confirm whether Keir Starmer had known that no fiscal shortfall existed. Reeves confirmed that he did. She described the two of them as operating in partnership, a comment that strengthened the perception that both leaders were equally responsible for the narrative presented to the public. She repeated this point of partnership in multiple interviews. In her interview with Trevor Phillips, the Chancellor made it clear that she and the Prime Minister operate as a united partnership.
By the way, was the Prime Minister informed through all of this process?
Yes,
and he was right there with you on it all.
Yes, of course.
Decisions we are a what you said on November the 4th.
Yes, we are a partnership. We have a budget board. The Prime Minister, Keir, and myself met regularly to discuss the budget and the choices, because these are the choices of this government.
The truth is simple. Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves now rise or fall together. Their political fortunes are no longer separate because the government's entire economic strategy is built on the partnership between the Prime Minister and his Chancellor. Reeves made this point herself in her interview with Trevor Phillips. When asked whether Starmer had been kept informed throughout the entire budget process, she didn't hesitate. Yes, she replied, repeatedly. And when pressed further, she made it clear. We are a partnership. These are the choices of this government. By this stage, criticism was widespread and came from across the political spectrum. Nadeem Sahawi said Reeves has to resign, describing her position as untenable. Richard Tice said Labour needed a new Chancellor to restore trust. Kemi Badenoch said Reeves had led the public to believe that tax rises were inevitable, even though the OBR had told her the opposite. She argued that Reeves was raising taxes to fund welfare policy changes, not because of any genuine fiscal emergency. Labour's biggest union donor also hit out at Miss Reeves over her manifesto-breaking budget. Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, told The Telegraph that her members had noticed the underhand continuation of the shameful stealth tax represented by the freezing of income tax thresholds. The FCA investigation request matters because it raises the question of whether market-sensitive information was manipulated. The ethics advisor request matters because it challenges Reeves's honesty and accuracy. The allegations from cabinet ministers matter because they suggest decision makers at the highest levels were not given accurate information. And the media scrutiny matters because it shapes public perception during a fragile period for the UK economy. By the end of November 2025, Rachel Reeves was facing simultaneous pressure from opposition parties, financial experts, cabinet colleagues, and the wider public. The calls for investigations by both the FCA and the ethics advisor highlighted just how serious the accusations had become. Whether Reeves survives politically remains to be seen. But what is clear is that this controversy did not emerge from a single moment. It was the result of a long chain of decisions, statements, omissions, and contradictions. The crisis is still evolving, and MPs, journalists, and financial authorities continue to demand answers. What happens next may shape not only Reeves's future, but the future of Keir Starmer's leadership and the public's trust in the government's handling of the economy. So what do you think? Did Rachel Reeves mislead the public? Let us know in the comments below.